Hi everyone, I'm Due from Hoërskool Rustenburg, and this is my teacher, Rachelle, with other two students from Hoërskool Rustenburg, and Leila Brits. And today we have an English session that Rachelle will lead for us.
Hello people. Today we are doing the poem Midterm Break, which was actually on the weekly planning for last term, but last term got cut short, so we will just make sure that everyone has it now. I asked you to write the poems down in your book. For the people listening, you can quickly just pause the video on the first two slides which contain the poem, and then you can make notes for the poem from there. Let me quickly share my screen with you. Okay. There we go. Can you see? Are you able to see? Good. Okay, let me just put it on slideshow. Okay, the poem is called Midterm Break. Now, we always read the poem aloud. I'm going to read it once with you. You follow in your books or on the slide. It's important to hear poetry out loud so that you can also hear the sounds. It's very important because sound is a big element of poetry. Hey. Midterm Break by Seamus Heaney. I sat all morning in the college sick bay, counting bells, nailing classes to a close. At 2 o'clock, our neighbors drove me home. In the porch, I met my father crying. He had always taken funerals in his stride, and Big Jim Evans saying it was a hard blow. The baby cooed and laughed and rocked the pram when I came in, and I was embarrassed by old men standing up to shake my hand and tell me they were sorry for my trouble. Whispers informed strangers I was the eldest, away at school as my mother held my hand in hers and coughed out angry tearless sighs. At 10 o'clock the ambulance arrived with a corpse, staunched and bandaged by the nurses. Next morning I went up into the room. Snowdrops and candles soothed the bedside. I saw him, for the first time in 6 weeks, paler now, wearing a poppy bruise on his left temple. He lay in the 4-foot box as in his cot. No gaudy scars, the bumper knocked him clear. A 4-foot box, a foot for every year. Okay guys, now who can tell me what the poem is about at first read through? Is there anyone who'd like to volunteer?
Ma'am, I think it's about a death or something in that matter that the poet experienced throughout his lifetime.
Yes, definitely. And how old do you think the poet was when he experienced this death?
I think the poet was very young because it tells you in the first line that he was in college at the college sick bay, so it indicates he was still at school.
Yes, exactly. And could you figure out who had died?
Most probably a sibling.
Yes, yes. Because it says he was the eldest away at school, and we know that his mother and father are still there because his mother held his hand and his father was crying on the porch. Hey, so it is most likely a sibling. Now let us have a look at the type of poem. We have done sonnets this year and we have done lyrics. Now this poem is also an example of a lyric because it expresses the poet's personal feelings, but it's also a new type, namely an elegy, a funeral speech or song. Can you think of any songs that they typically play at funerals which would also be described as an elegy? Not right now. I'm thinking of, for example, that song by Sarah McLachlan for In the Arms of the Angel. There are certain songs that we always play at funerals while we watch the PowerPoints or whatever, and it makes us even more sad. Hey, now this is also an example of an elegy because it's about death. Hey, What would you say the mood of the poem is? How do you feel when you read the poem? Do you feel joyful and happy?
Ma'am, I would
No, ma'am,
say the poem. Sorry.
Okay,
you
Laila?
can,
Ma'am, I would say that the poem is very sad because it's about death and the experience of death and impact on death on the poet and his family and the people around them.
Yes, so the mood is definitely melancholy and mournful. That is how you feel when you read the poem, hey? And the tone is somber and sad. Do you know the difference between mood and tone?
I can try and define it. I
Okay?
guess the mood of or the definition of a mood is basically how it makes you feel, and
Yeah.
the tone. I'm not exactly sure about tone, but I can definitely discern from mood.
Yes. Okay, mood is how it makes you feel, the reader. Hey. And tone is what the poet intended. Mood has to do with your feelings, tone has to do with the poet's feelings. And sometimes, mostly they are in line with each other, but sometimes they are very different. Because sometimes, if it's not a very good poet, for example, he can have a very serious and somber tone, but because he's not very good, we find it funny, hey, and the mood is funny and light. Um, but in this poem, the mood and tone are much the same because this is a wonderful poet, Seamus Heaney, in my opinion. Hey, so the tone is somber and sad, and because the poet felt somber and sad when he wrote this, the mood, the emotion that we feel, is also melancholy and mournful. Melancholy is another word for sad. Remember, we can't use happy and sad at mood and tone, but we'll get to that actually in the next lesson or two. The rhythm iambic pentameter. Marley, can you remember what iambic pentameter is again, like we did in Sonnet 18?
Yes, it is with the beat of a heartbeat, so it's very natural.
Yes, exactly. It's pa-dum, 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 pa-dum. And iamb means a piece of something, and penta means 5. Meter means rhythm. So it's a rhythm where there are 5 stressed and 5 unstressed syllables. So it sounds exactly like a heartbeat. Pa-dum, 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 pa-dum. So it's very natural, like you said. The rhyme scheme is mostly blank and free verse except for the last rhyming couplet. The last 2 lines of the poem rhyme. Can anyone think of a reason why the poet would not rhyme anything except for the last 2 lines? He wants to emphasize them. Hey, they are the most important. We'll see just now. Okay, now let's begin with a line by line, stanza by stanza analysis. Or no, let's have a look at the title first. The title is ironic. When you read the words midterm break, what do you expect? Laila?
Ma'am, midterm break, I expect something enjoyable. It's like the summer vacation that you enjoy. It's fun-filled. It's everything as the holiday. But in this poem, midterm break refers to him losing his brother and the death and the sad impact it had on him.
Exactly. When you hear the words midterm break, you think, oh, this is going to be fun. We're going on a little holiday in the middle of the term. But in this case, it's very sad because his brother had died. It's just like now. We are in a midterm break at the moment. We are in a term and we are having a break, and it's not a good one because we are scared of getting a virus. Hey, so it's a very appropriate poem to do at this point. The word break, yes, can refer definitely to a little holiday in the middle of a term, but it can also refer to the fractured family, the cutting of the ties between him and his brother and the end of a life. Hey. Okay, so the title is ironic. We expect something fun yet it's about death. His midterm break was not fun at all. Stanza 1. The first line, I sat all morning in the college sick bay. Now, college in this case, this poem is set in Northern Ireland. This is not like the Americans that call university college. College is a school, like Grey College. Hey, I sat all morning in the college sick bay. What is a sick bay, Marley? Are you there? Okay, she's experiencing technical difficulties, it seems. Dube, do you know what a sick bay is?
Ma'am, a sick bay is a place you go when you feel sick.
Yes. When you get sick at school, remember this poem was written in the 1950s, and he didn't have a phone to WhatsApp his mom, listen, I don't feel well. So he had to sit in the college sick bay. But he's not sick, as you'll see just now. I sat all morning in the college sick bay. I is a personal pronoun. It's his own account. This poem is based on a true story. This actually happened to him. So the fact that it starts with the letter I, or the word I, is very appropriate because it's his own personal account of losing his brother. All morning, people, I want you to underline this. Take a highlighter or a colored pen or whatever and highlight all morning, because the poem is very specific about the times at which things happen. And the first time that we get is all morning. So all morning he was sitting there in the sick room, and all he had to do was counting bells. He might have been feeling bored, apprehensive, and sad. He was not sick, but his brother had died, so he had to wait there for someone to fetch him from school. Do you think that it's a good idea to put a little boy alone in the sick bay all morning when he just received the news that his brother died?
No, ma'am, because the little boy is emotionally unstable and it's traumatic for the little boy. So it's very difficult to process what has been.
Exactly. I think this is why he mentions the fact that he sat in the sick bay, because it must have been a traumatic experience for him. Sitting there alone, obviously he didn't have a phone because cell phones hadn't even been invented then. He probably didn't have anything to read. All he could do was to count the bells at the end of each class. That is how he could even tell time. Now the next line says, counting bells, nailing classes to a close. The first thing I want you to look at there is the alliteration of the C sound. Counting, classes, close. Why does he repeat the C sound? Or the K sound? Why do you think? Dube, you're on my screen now, so you can answer this question for me, please.
Ma'am, does it have something to do with how he wants to emphasize how
Yes.
what he wants?
Exactly. When you have to answer a question about alliteration or assonance, it always emphasizes something or imitates something. In this case, he wants to, the repetition imitates the repeating of the bells, and the harsh sound, the k, 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 emphasizes the harshness of the death, hey, of his little brother dying. Now the word knelling, the bells on, it doesn't say the bells are ringing. Usually we would say a school bell rings, but the word knelling has a different meaning. It has to do with funeral bells. So there's already this foreshadowing of a death that will take place. Okay, we already know that something is wrong because he's all alone in the sick bay. And now the bells are not ringing classes to a close, they are knelling. So they sound like funeral bells to him. Okay. Then the last fact that I want you to note there is the repetition of the L sound. Bells, knelling classes. It slows down the poem and reinforces the mournful atmosphere. And it even sounds a little bit like a funeral bell. Hey, ooh. Do you agree with me, or am I being far-fetched? Do you think it could sound like a funeral bell? Okay. He had nothing else to do, so he had to sit alone in the sick room and count the bells signaling the end of classes. People, are you with me so far? Just throw a thumbs up if you are with me. Do you understand everything? Good. At 2 o'clock, our neighbors drove me home. So there's the specific time again. First, all morning is mentioned, and now the specific time, 2 o'clock. Now, if anything very traumatic and bad has ever happened to you, you will know that we remember minute details of such a tragic event. So that is why he remembers the specific time. It shows that something really traumatic is taking place. And it also shows the progression of time from morning to 2 o'clock. Why are his neighbors driving him home, do you think, Marley?
Because his parents have other things to do with, like a funeral maybe.
Yes, we would think that, hey, that his parents are maybe too sad to drive. If we read the poem, that would be considered the reason, but if you read Seamus Heaney's biography, it's actually that his parents didn't own a car, but that dilutes the line a little bit, hey. It's not as effective. He specifically remembers his neighbors driving him home. So it's not even his parents, it's all has to do with this distancing between himself and his family. It's unusual, something's wrong, the fact that his neighbors are driving him home. And then there's the assonance of the O sound, drove me home. Again, a long drawn out sound, sad and mournful. People, the pace of a poem also contributes to the atmosphere in the poem. Okay, so in this case, we have these long drawn out sounds like L and O to make the poem seem slow and long. When you sing the school song and you sing it too slowly, they tell you, this is not a funeral, sing more upbeat. Hey? So the slowness of the sound make the poem even sadder. Okay. Are you fine with stanza 1? Are there any questions? Okay, great. In the porch, I met my father crying. What's a porch, Layla?
Ma'am, a porch is at your home. It's just outside the front door there, usually where the people sit or come in. Yes, ma'am.
Exactly, like a stoop, hey? The porch is outside. Why is the father on the porch, do you think? Why is he not in the house with his family?
Father was on the porch because he doesn't want everyone to see him crying and being emotional, because he usually portrays a strong figure of a father, and a father usually doesn't cry in front of the children or portray his feelings in that matter.
Exactly. He has lots of children and a wife, and they are neighbors and everybody, so he obviously doesn't want everyone to see him crying. Do you think it's allowed for a father to cry if he has just lost a child? Of course it is. Hey, of course a father must cry when he loses a child. But in this case, in the 1950s, there was still this machismo almost, where the men weren't allowed to even cry when their children died. So this is a very big shock for him. He walks out on the porch, and what does he see? He sees his father crying. And that is unusual. It shocks him. It's a very emotional moment for him, almost like coming of age. It's probably the first time he sees his father crying, because in the next line he says he had always taken funerals in his stride. Now, in his stride is an idiom that we use. Marley, what do you think it means?
I think it means that it doesn't bother him at all that something happened.
Yes. Exactly. So they had been to funerals before, but his father had never cried. It means he copes easily at funerals. He's not that sad and emotional usually. So this is unusual. We already get the idea. We know that something is wrong because he spent all morning alone in the sick bay and then his neighbors took him home. Now he's at his house. The geography of the poem has changed from his school to his house. And out on his porch, he sees this father figure. His father, always strong, always taking funerals in his stride, and now his father's actually standing there crying. And it's a moment for him. Hey, it's this almost life-defining moment, this coming of age. He's a man now because he has seen his father cry. You'll see why I say that a little bit later. And Big Jim Evans saying it was a hard blow. Who do you think Big Jim Evans is?
Ma'am, it can be a family friend or someone they know close to the family, because they refer to him as Big Jim Evans. They have like a nickname in the front for him.
Yes, exactly. Perfect answer. He's a neighbor or a family friend. He's someone who knows them well enough to be with them at a time like this. And he says that it's a hard blow. Now, people, this could be interpreted literally and figuratively. It was definitely a hard blow, literally, when the car knocked the boy over. But it's also figuratively a hard blow because the family is very emotionally hurt by the death of the little child. Hey, do you think that Big Jim Evans meant to make a pun there? He meant to be funny? Probably not.
I think,
Yes?
no, ma'am, I don't think so. I just think he doesn't know how to process death.
Exactly. He doesn't know how to deal with it. He finds the whole situation awkward. So he says, it's a hard blow. Hey, I don't think he means to be insensitive. Are there any questions for stanza 2, or are you still with me? Dube, can you quickly sum up for me what has happened in the poem so far?
Yes, ma'am. So in the beginning of the poem, we're introduced by a little boy who's basically at school, who is sick and or actually traumatized by what he's heard about losing a sibling. And we also learn about the author who doesn't know how to take to process death, as well as the father who the son who for the first time just saw his father cry.
Yes, exactly. That is a good summary of where we are at the moment. Stanza 3. Now someone else handles this completely differently. The baby cooed and laughed and rocked the pram when I came in. People, do you see how the rhythm changes there? Instead of these long drawn out sounds, it's the baby cooed and laughed and rocked the pram. Why is the baby not sad? It's innocent and unaware of the events taking place. Hey, the baby doesn't even know that she just lost her brother. Cooed is baby noises, onomatopoeia. It's almost like a dove sound, hey, that babies make. Rock the pram, the baby was kicking in joy because she was glad. Why? Why do you think the baby was glad?
Ma'am, I don't think the baby was glad. I just think the baby doesn't understand what happened. The baby's innocent. It doesn't know how to portray emotions and doesn't understand the current situation that is happening.
Yes, exactly. Babies, if they are fed and warm and in the presence of their mothers and fathers, they are happy. That's all they need. They don't understand complex emotional issues. Or the baby could be glad because she's seeing her eldest brother, the poet, the speaker, for the first time because she rocked the pram when he came in. So that is when she was kicking in joy. Hey. And I was embarrassed by old men standing up to shake my hand. Do we know when an older person enters the room, an older man, what do you usually do? Do you stand up to shake his hand, or do you stay seated and he must come and shake your hand?
I stand up to shake his hand, man.
Exactly. It's still customary today that a younger person must stand up to shake an older person's hand. Hey, so he was very embarrassed by this happening. The old men were standing up when he entered to shake his hand instead of him coming to them. It's also another event that takes place that shows that he has become an adult by this death, even though he's only 10 years old. The old men are treating him like an adult, standing up to shake his hand and give their condolences to him. Hey, I said there in the little text box beneath the line, maybe death forces him to grow up too soon, which is implied by the fact that the men now greet him as an adult. Hey. The word implies means to say something without actually saying it in so many words. So do you agree that his coming of age, the poem implies that his childhood has been cut short by the death of his brother? Yes, I also think so. Hey. Okay, stanza 4. And tell me they were sorry for my trouble. People, do you see all the enjambment in the poem, how one line from one stanza runs onto another? If we look at the previous slide, by old men standing up to shake my hand and tell me they were sorry for my trouble. The lines run onto each other like our thoughts run onto one another. Hey, it's because this poem is such a personal account. It's basically his thoughts on the matter. He's relating these events. Sorry for my trouble is an example of the figure of speech euphemism. Euphemism is the opposite of hyperbole. Where hyperbole is making something sound much larger than it is, euphemism is making something sound softer. For example, you won't say to someone, so your father just died. You will say to them, I'm sorry your father passed away. That's an example of saying something in a softer manner. Hey. And now they are telling him, we are sorry for your trouble. In what way is this a euphemism for death?
Ma'am, I
Marley?
think it is a...
Never mind, Layla, go on.
Ma'am, I think it is a euphemism because they don't want to come harsh towards the poet to say sorry for the death that occurred to your sibling or anything. They want to say it very soft and nice so the poet doesn't get so emotional.
Exactly. They are saying this, and also because they are awkward. Hey, talking about death, and especially the death of someone's loved one, is usually very awkward. We don't know how to broach the subject. So we just say, oh, sorry for your trouble. Hey. I think this trivializes the death a little bit. It makes it sound smaller or less important than it really is. Because trouble is something like having a flat tire, not the death of someone in your direct family. So in my opinion, it trivializes the death. The fact that they say, sorry for my trouble. Then the next line, whispers informed strangers, I was the eldest. Now people, the sound device where we repeat this S sound is called sibilance. And why does the poet add the S sound there? Why does he repeat it? Whispers informed strangers, I was eldest. It sounds like whispering. Hey, they whisper out of respect, but also maybe because they are gossiping. And the S sound actually imitates the sound of whispers. Away at school as my mother held my hand. So where was he when the death took place? At school. Hey, he wasn't home.
Ma'am, I think he was at school.
Yes, exactly. He was at school. He wasn't with his family. As my mother held my hand in hers and coughed out angry, tearless sighs. Because of the enjambment there, I'm just quickly going back to this slide. The alliteration of the H emphasizes that his mother relied on him. It's again a sign of coming of age. He has to comfort his parents. His mother's not holding his hand to comfort him. She's actually holding his hand because he has to comfort her. How do we know? Because she's coughing out angry, tearless sighs. We remember the father was crying. Why do you think the mother's not crying, Marley?
Well, most probably she's done crying. She's cried so much that she doesn't have anything left to cry out.
Yes, that's definitely a possibility. And also with grief, when you experience grief when someone dies, sadness is not the only emotion that we experience. There are these stages of grief, and anger is one of them. It's a valid emotion to feel while you are grieving. So she's making this sound. What's a sigh? It sounds like okay, and we associate that sound. It has a negative connotation. Hey, we will sigh when we are stressed or anxious. And she's coughing out these sounds. So it's these angry, tearless sighs that she almost violently expels from her body, like something like that. Hey, she cannot cry anymore. Who do you think the mother could be angry with, Marley, while I have you here? Who do you think it's possible for her to be angry with?
I think she may be angry with the people that run over her child that caused his death.
Yes, definitely. Maybe they were not watching where they were driving. Hey, or she could be angry with herself. Maybe she was angry that she didn't watch him or keep him inside. Or the father. Maybe the father was supposed to watch him. Or maybe even she thinks the father's not grieving correctly. She may even be angry at her child. Maybe she told him 100 times, don't go into the street. Maybe she's even angry at God. Because why did he take away her child? Hey, death is a very confusing time. When someone you love a lot dies, it's very confusing, and sometimes we feel very angry when this happens. Okay, at time again, at 10 o'clock the ambulance arrived. 10 o'clock, again the specific time shows progression from all morning to 2 o'clock. Now we are at 10 o'clock. And the repetition of the A sound, its assonance, it slows down the tempo. Ambulance arrived. The short sound may indicate the abrupt end to the boy's life. With the corpse. Now people, this is important. He doesn't say with my brother or with little Peter or whatever the brother's name was. He says with the corpse. He somehow distances himself from this. Have you noted that not once in the poem the speaker talks about his own emotions? Did you notice that? Yes. Okay, so he distances himself by not saying my brother. He says the corpse. Now it's customary in some cultures to have a viewing of the body before you actually bury it. Now in Northern Ireland in the 1950s, Catholic specifically, this would be there. They would take the corpse back to the house and people would be able to go and say their last goodbyes. Staunched means to stop the blood by using thick bandages. Stanza 6. Next morning I went up into the room. Snowdrops and candles soothed the bedside. I saw him for the first time in 6 weeks, paler now. Okay, so it's now the next morning. It started with all morning, then it was 2 o'clock, then 10 o'clock, now it's the next morning. Shows time progression again. I went into the room. What is the room? Where his brother was, where the body was displayed, probably in his bedroom. Hey. Snowdrops and candles soothed the bedside. Snowdrops are these small little white flowers that appear early spring. They are the first ones to come out of the snow. And they could symbolize life after death, spring after winter. Hey, a young child who died, the flowers are small and pale, just like the child. They are very delicate and they don't last a long time, just like the little child. Hey, the mood the speaker appears calmer. He's not this anxious little boy anymore. He has a private moment with his dead brother. He never expresses his own emotions throughout the poem, but there's a sense of grief and loss. Okay, now this figure of speech, snowdrops and candles soothe the bedside. Can this actually happen? No, it's personification. It's actually the people who come in to view the child are soothed by the prettiness of the candles and the flowers. Hey, to soothe means to troos, to comfort. And now for the first time he refers to his brother as him. It's more personal. Hey, he no longer refers to his brother as the corpse. Maybe this is a step to acceptance and peace. For the first time in 6 weeks, Layla, remember you said he was away at school. So for 6 weeks he hadn't seen his brother. And one thing looks different now. What is that one thing? He looks paler. Paler means more white. Why does he look paler, do you think, Dube?
Because there's lack of blood flow, his heart
Exactly.
starts pumping.
Exactly. He's not pumping blood anymore, so he looks paler. Wearing a poppy bruise on his left temple. A poppy is a small red flower. And on his left temple, here, there's this little red bruise that looks like a poppy flower. The shape and color must be the same. And he says he wears a poppy bruise. So it's almost as though this is not part of him, almost as though it's pinned on. Hey, on his left temple, probably where the car hit him or where he fell. Now this is where it gets important. He lay in the 4-foot box as in his cot. The 4-foot box? A coffin. His cot, his little bed. No gaudy scars. The bumper knocked him clear. For the first time now, we know what happened to the little boy. He got knocked down by a car. And there are no scars. He doesn't look all horrific and creepy like a zombie or whatever. The bumper knocked him clear. And it almost makes it more upsetting, the fact that he just looks as though he is sleeping. A 4-foot box, a foot for every year. Now, in my opinion, this is the saddest line in the poem because the boy was only 4 years old. So there's this tiny little coffin with this tiny little person inside it. Hey, the line is placed alone for emphasis and dramatic effect. It's the only line in the poem that rhymes with another. It creates a feeling of deep sympathy with the reader. The brother was so young and small. Finally, we understand the father's sadness and the mother's anger. Okay. People, do you think it's significant that this line was placed alone? Yes, definitely. Hey, it's to emphasize, it's to give shock value. This little boy who died. Okay, that's it for today. Do you understand the poem? Great. Thank you, guys.